Yeah, we back. Now today's gonna be a follow-up video to the videos I dropped to Six to Goddess, but it's not gonna be about Six to Goddess. I'm actually gonna be replying to a comment that I got from, I believe, one of her supporters. Now, if you watch that video, you already know one thing I said was, black men in this society, you have no power to hold any woman accountable, anybody accountable. You can't hold nobody accountable, bro. You have no economic power, you have no political power, and as long as this remains to be the case, then you have no power to hold anyone accountable. And in those videos, I repeatedly said, if you want to hold a woman accountable, if you want to hold anyone accountable, you better become powerful in the arena of economics and politics, in the arena of business and politics. If you don't have those two things on lock, or you're not actively working to have those two things on lock, then you're wasting your time trying to hold anybody accountable. That's why I said, don't even waste your time. Focus on accumulating power, influence, and prestige in society. That was my word of advice that I gave to my brothers. But apparently, there was a woman that came into my comment section and she decided to misconstrue what I said. And I believe she was a supporter of Six to Goddess because she was going all up and down my comment section, repeating her talking points and things like that. Her talking points that she got from Tariq Nasheed. These motherfuckers just, ventriloquist dummies and shit like that. But anyways, if you take a look up on the screen, the lady said, "We're not mad that white people are in a position to oppress. We're mad that we don't hold the same position." And I blocked the word out at the end, but it was a quote, and at the end she said N-words. So basically she's saying that black men, if we want to become economically and politically powerful, then that means that we want to be like white people, right? Because in her mind, black men have never ever been in a position of power, and only white men have been powerful throughout the ages of time, throughout the history of civilization, in her mind, right? But this is what happens when you come up in the American educational system, where history begins in the year 1492. It is what it is, man. A lot of our people are just not intelligent. You can't really blame them, bro. A lot of our people just walking around dumb as fuck thinking they smart as hell. But anyways, let's get into it. Now that I think about it, this video could also be a follow-up to the one I did on Austin Holloman when I spoke about the seeds of anti-blackness that are planted inside of our heads in this society. Because a black woman who has her head on straight, she should support the idea of black men putting themselves in a position of power. Because at the end of the day, that will be a benefit to her and her children as well, her community as well. Because a group of men with no power can provide nothing for their women and children. But because a lot of our people are so indoctrinated, they have the same exact fears and apprehension that white people have. Because white people are the one that believe that if black men get into a position of power, then we're going to subjugate them. We're going to oppress them. We're going to seek vengeance upon them. But now we have black women that also believe that if black men put themselves in a position of power, then that means that we are going to become the oppressors, right? You see, so misguided. Other groups of women don't think like this. That's why the majority of white women voted for Trump, because they wanted their men to maintain the position of power, because they understand that if their men are in power, then that means my sons will be in power, and my daughters will be in power by association, and I'll be in power also by affiliation. But our women are so indoctrinated on BS and nonsense, they believe that their own men getting into a position of power will be a negative to them. But like I said, man, the seeds of anti-blackness are planted inside our heads from a young age in this society. Now, let's get into it, man. I gotta take some of y'all women to class. I gotta take y'all to class like I be taking my brothers to class. We gotta take the women to class today. Now, before we get started, think about this. If the majority of black men in this society are being raised in single mother households under the leadership of black women, and we have black women that believe that black men getting into a position of power will be a negative to them, do you believe that she will raise her son in a way to where he will have a mindset that will be geared towards chasing power? Or do you believe she will raise her son in a way with a mindset geared towards remaining in a subordinate and powerless position? And you wonder why so many of our black men don't have the mentality that is necessary to obtain power. You wonder why. We can see why. Now, let's get into it. You see, unfortunately, due to the fact that so many of our women are so misguided and so indoctrinated, when I say holding people accountable and having power, the only thing that pops into their head is the negative, the downside. But they don't understand the opposite end of the spectrum. The opposite end of the spectrum is providing rewards, opportunities. That's the opposite end, right? They only see the negative because they don't ever want to be held accountable for nothing. That's why I told y'all boys, don't waste your time trying to hold them accountable. You can't hold these women accountable. They are immune. They are allergic. They are allergic to being held accountable. So don't waste your time until you get powerful. That's what I said. That's what I'm always going to say. But you see, what so many of our women don't understand is a man that has the ability to hold someone accountable also has the ability to provide rewards and opportunities at the same time. Because being able to provide rewards and opportunities to people is how you build alliances, build friendships, maintain your networks, and the ability to provide punishments and hold someone accountable is how you punish your enemies. And that is all encompassed in having power. But unfortunately, many of our women do not understand that. They want to get online and cry and complain and say, oh, black men don't protect us. Black men don't do this and that. Well, guess what? For a black man to effectively protect you, He has to be in a position of power. But once he's in a position of power, he also has the ability to hold you accountable for the things that you do and say. That's the opposite end of the spectrum. And to avoid that reality, they try to shame you and say you want to be like white people and you want to be an oppressor. But what they don't understand is you cannot have it both ways. You cannot expect black men to become powerful enough to protect you from the dangers of the world, from outside foreign adversaries, but then you don't want them to become powerful enough to hold you accountable. You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. Either you want black men to remain in the current state that they are, where they cannot hold you accountable, but at the same time, if they can't hold you accountable, they can't protect you, they can't provide anything for you. So at the end of the day, you got to pick and choose. Either you want black men to become powerful enough to protect you and provide for you, but at the same time, they'll be able to hold you accountable, or you want black men to remain powerless to where they cannot hold you accountable, but at the same time, they have zero ability to protect you from any outside threat, any foreign adversary trying to do harm or commit violence against the community. You got to pick and choose. You got to pick a side, and you got to pick a side and stay on that side. There is not a single reality in any universe that exists where a man or a collective group of men are powerful enough to protect and provide for the women and children, but also not powerful enough to hold their women and children accountable for their actions. It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. And unfortunately, this is the level of delusion that many black women currently are suffering with, because they want to compare us to white men and say white men do this and that, and they do this and that, and they provide and protect. They leave out the fact that white men control the Constitution. They wrote the Constitution. They control the laws. They control the media. They control the social norms of society on what's acceptable and what's not. So unfortunately, what a lot of black women want, they want black men to become powerful enough to give them the benefits that white women receive, but they don't want any of the downside on the opposite end of the spectrum. They don't want to be able to be held accountable. They don't want black men to be able to write up the Constitution and lay down the laws and customs of society, which they are forced to follow. They don't want that side. They only want the good side. They only want the benefits. But today, man, we're going to talk about it, bro. We're going to talk about the importance of black men as a collective becoming powerful enough to not only provide and protect for our women and children, but also being able to hold them accountable for their actions. And not even holding them accountable, but also any foreign adversary and any foreign threat that comes to seek harm against us. Men should be able to hold anybody accountable. If a man is not able to hold people accountable, then you have no power. And if you have no power, then what purpose do you serve as a man? Why are you even here? Why are you even breathing? Like, why do you exist? Anyways, let's get into it, bro. And hopefully some of y'all boys can understand why I say it's a waste of time trying to hold women accountable, trying to hold anybody accountable if you are not powerful. Now let's talk about it. The ability to hold someone accountable for their actions, it requires the power to provide both rewards and punishments. That's what I don't understand. Without this power, holding someone accountable becomes impossible. And when we say power, we're not talking about individual power, because as an individual, that's fine. Any man can be individually powerful, right? Individually by myself, I believe that I have the power to hold the women around me accountable for their actions, because I have the power to provide rewards for positive actions. But I'm also intelligent enough to know that black men as a collective do not hold the same power. Black men as a collective cannot hold anybody accountable. That's why we're not respected as a group, even though we may have powerful men amongst the collective here and there, but as a collective, we are not respected as a group of men. And we'll never have that respect until we're able to hold people accountable. Not even just on a one-to-one basis, individual basis, but also globally, politically, geopolitically. But that's a topic for another day. We're talking about the dynamics between men and women today. So we're going to leave the geopolitics and all that. And, we're going to leave that for another day. Number one, the first thing we got to understand is the importance of rewards. When someone does something positive or desirable, they should be rewarded for it. The reward can be in the form of recognition, praise, or other positive consequences. When you reward someone, you encourage them to continue doing that same positive behavior. And it becomes a norm which is followed by others in society. And this is where collective power comes into play. That's why I don't focus on individual power. I don't fall into the trap of individualism. That's not how you get power. Power comes through working as a collective with your brothers. When a group of men rewards a desirable behavior, it becomes a social norm and people start to follow it collectively. For example, when a company rewards employees for good performance, it encourages others to perform well to receive the same reward. Thus, when a group has the power to provide rewards, they can hold people accountable for positive actions by making it a social norm practiced among the collective. Now, let's consider the importance of punishment. This is what the women don't want. They don't ever want to be held accountable. They don't want to be punished. They don't want to be reprimanded. They don't want none of it. They want the benefits and the luxuries. They don't want none of the drawbacks or the downside. But listen, it is what it is. Like I said, you got to pick and choose. You either want black men to become powerful and provide and protect you, or you don't. Pick a side and stay on that side. Now let's get back into it, man. Let's talk about punishment. When someone does something negative or undesirable, they should be punished for it. The punishment can be in the form of reprimand, penalty, or other negative consequences. And when you punish someone, you discourage them from repeating that same negative behavior. And it becomes less and less of a social norm because people don't want to be associated with the shame that comes along with being a person that is known for that certain behavior. It's human nature. This is where collective power comes into play once again. When a group of people punishes undesirable behavior, it becomes less and less of a social norm and people start to avoid it altogether. For example, when a school punishes a student for cheating, it discourages others from cheating, and cheating becomes less of a social norm. Thus, when a group has the power to provide punishment, just like they can provide rewards, they can hold people accountable for negative actions by making it less and less acceptable in society. Now that we've discussed the importance of black men becoming powerful enough to influence society, let's talk about how powerful nations also hold other nations accountable. And notice the key word that I use, powerful nations, because if you are not a powerful nation, you cannot hold anyone accountable for nothing. Now, the first thing we got to understand is powerful nations have a range of tools at their disposal to hold other nations accountable for their actions. These tools can be categorized into 4 main categories: economic, diplomatic, militaristic, and legal action. Number 1, economic tools. Economic sanctions are one of the most commonly used economic tools to hold other nations accountable. Sanctions involve restricting trade, investment, and other economic activity within a target country. Sanctions can be targeted or against specific individuals or entities in the country, or targeting the entire economy. The goal of the economic sanction is to create economic pressure on the target country to change their behavior. Number 2, diplomatic action. Diplomatic tools involve using diplomatic channels to hold other nations accountable. This can include summoning the ambassador of the target country, issuing public statements, or expelling diplomats. Diplomatic tools are often used to express displeasure with the target country's actions or to communicate expectations for behavior. Now, going back to the lady's comment, don't you see how misguided she is as it relates to black men obtaining power? Do you see how so many of our women are unable to see the bigger picture on why it's important for black men to obtain power? Why would any black woman be against the idea of black men obtaining power? But unfortunately, that's what happens when you come up in an anti-black society. Those seeds get planted into your head, and even yourself as a black person, you don't even want your own people to be in a position of power. And that's truly a shame. But anyways, let's get back into it. Number 3, military tools or militaristic action. Military tools involve using military force to hold other nations accountable. This can range from non-lethal actions such as military exercises or deploying troops, or lethal action such as airstrikes or military invasion. Military tools are often used as a last resort when other measures have failed or when a nation's vital interests are at stake. Number 4, legal action. Legal action involves using international law to hold other nations accountable. This can include bringing cases before international courts or using international treaties and conventions to hold nations accountable for violating human rights or committing war crimes. Now, those are the 4 ways that nations can hold other nations accountable. So why do our women believe that they should be immune to being held accountable? I don't know why, but like I said, brothers, focus on obtaining power. Don't focus on sitting around trying to argue and go back and forth in debate and try to hold them accountable. That don't mean nothing. That don't mean shit. And what bothered me the most about her comment is that she compared us to white people. She said you want to be white if you want to be powerful. Why did she compare us to our ancient African ancestors who had kingdoms and civilizations and nations going back thousands of years? Why did she compare us to our forefathers and our ancestors who held power and influence in their societies? Why didn't she compare us to our forefathers? Why did she compare us to the European? Because in her mind, subconsciously, she views the European as the only one who is able and eligible to wield power and influence in society. She doesn't see the black man in that light because she doesn't have that education. She doesn't know about the history of her people. For example, she doesn't know how back in the days of the Oyo Empire, she doesn't know about the days of the Zulu Empire when a general went into battle and he came back and he wasn't victorious. He had to kill himself. Similar to the Japanese samurai, to maintain your honor, you had to delete yourself. That's how they were held accountable. In our ancient societies and civilizations, we had laws and customs that were established. And if you decided to disobey those laws, you were punished and you were imprisoned. Because the black men during that time in history, they were able to hold people accountable. The black man nowadays, you can't hold nobody accountable because you don't got no power. And unfortunately, there's a segment of black women in our society who don't even want you to ever have power ever again. Unfortunately, my brother, it is what it is. You got to accept the reality because they don't want to be held accountable. So they rather you remain in a position of powerlessness. It is what it is. But we ain't going to listen to them though. We going to chase this power for sure. Now let's talk about the modern day. How can black men put themselves in a position to be able to hold people accountable? Now, first things first, like I always say, bro, if you don't got economic or political power, you ain't holding nothing accountable. You ain't holding shit accountable, all right? Powerful groups of men who hold political and economic power can hold people accountable through a variety of means, including through the use of laws, social norms, and economic incentives. Especially. Number one, let's discuss the laws of society. Powerful men can use their influence to create and enforce laws that hold people accountable for their actions. This includes creating criminal laws that prohibit certain behaviors and impose penalties for those who violate them. Now, this goes back to what I said in previous videos. Black men in this society, regardless of your background, you can't hold nobody accountable because you have no control over the judicial system and the laws that are being made and passed. You don't control that. So you can't hold nobody accountable from a legal aspect, unfortunately. Not in this country anyway. Not in this country. You're going to have to run your money all the way up before you can start influencing the laws. I'm telling you, bro, you're going to have to run up that check first. Number two, let's discuss the social norms. Powerful men can influence social norms and hold people accountable for their actions through public opinion. For example, they can use their influence to promote certain behaviors and encourage certain behaviors and discourage other behaviors. By doing so, you create a culture of accountability where people feel a sense of responsibility to behave in a certain way. And that also goes back to what I said. If you don't have the power to influence society, how are you going to influence people's behaviors? It won't happen. You don't got the power to do it. Number three, let's talk about economic incentives. Powerful men can hold people accountable by using economic incentives because they can provide rewards to individuals for behaving in a certain way. That goes back to what I said earlier about providing rewards and punishments. At the same time, they can impose penalties or withhold economic benefits from those who engage in behaviors that are not seen as desirable to the collective. And that goes back to when you see people getting canceled, people losing contracts, people losing their job, people getting fired, etc., etc. But if you are not in a position to provide contracts to people, provide opportunities to people, provide jobs to people, how are you going to take those opportunities away if you're not even providing them in the first place? That's why I say, brothers, you got to get powerful first, man, before you think about holding people accountable. I mean, you putting the cart before the horse, man. Now, before we get out of here, man, let's talk about the connection between economics and politics, because as we know, it's complex and intertwined. Men who are powerful in the arena of business and economics can also influence politics, which in turn can shape society as a whole in terms of laws and social norms. Men who are powerful in business can use their financial resources to influence politics. This can involve making donations to political campaigns or lobbying for certain policies that align with their interests. By doing so, they can gain access to decision makers and potentially shape the policies that govern the broader economy and society as a whole. But if you have no economic or political power, how are you going to influence society? You're not going to be able to influence society by going back and forth and arguing and debating and having gender wars on the internet. That's not how intelligent men operate. Like I said in previous videos, powerful men don't even got to say a word, bro. They just make one phone call and they hold you accountable. So I just want my brothers to raise the standard. You know what I mean? Don't worry about these chicks talking about, they trying to shame you because you want to be powerful. Don't worry about nothing, bro. Like I said, they are allergic to accountability. They're going to say and do anything to avoid accountability. But that's irrelevant as it relates to you obtaining power. Stay focused on the objective. Stay focused on the finish line, man. It is what it is, man. If you want the behavior of women to change, then force it to change. And you're not going to force it to change by arguing, debates, gender wars, back and forth like a tennis match. Bro, that's not how you do it. But anyways, it's your boy Neferkari Desalegn back in the building. Yes, indeed. Like, share, subscribe, Cash App in the description. And I'm gone. Peace.
Reincarnated, I'm back in original fashion. I left on a horse and came back in that ass, and I left with abundance and came back to famine. We used to be pyramids, now we be rapping. Look how the mighty have fallen. Used to be running, now we be walking. When you be cooning, that's when they applauded. Selling your soul, your sons and your daughter. Gotta come up in this shit, they stuck in the mix. Really, my heart it be breaking. That's why I'm stacking that paper and handle my business. Pass it down in generation. Talking about money and power and building a nation. That's a deadly combination. Never be watching the TV, they pushing agendas, falsifying information. No, they got malice intentions. Step in the room and I'm feeling the tension. Enemy watching, he blocking my vision. Pay for the check cause I need my redemption. Building my kingdom, I need it protected. Ready for war like a young Money Congo. Never decided the team is the motto. Up in the crib and I'm whipping up waffles. Up in the crib and I'm smoking gelato. I'm chilling, I'm taking my pain and make it ambition. I'm blessed by the gods, but I ain't religious. I came for the power, they came for the bitch. They making no hourly wage, I got business. This shit is an art and they could never be taught. Selling my soul, I can never be bought. Play with my money, I see you ain't caught. Run to the check and I do it for sport. Babylon falling, I go to the source. Packing my luggage and go overseas. Shorty be with me and she so elite. Shorty be chocolate, I'm calling her Hershey. Secret intelligence probably gon' murk me. Don't fuck with brands cause nigga I'm Haitian. Say the wrong shit and you're smacking their faces.